The mansion stood silent, a fortress of glass and stone along the Hamptons shoreline, where the wind carried the smell of salt and the crash of waves against private cliffs. Inside, marble floors reflected the light of chandeliers, but the house felt colder than the ocean breeze outside. Servants moved quietly, careful not to disturb the man who ruled every corner of this place. Robert Kingsley, billionaire investor, feared by competitors and employees alike. His orders were swift, his patience non-existent, and his reputation with nannies was infamous. In the span of 7 days, 6 women had come and gone, dismissed before they even had time to unpack their bags. Each had left with the same expression, exhaustion mixed with humiliation. They could not manage his daughter, Emily, a 7-year-old child who seemed sweet to strangers, but erupted in uncontrollable tantrums once behind closed doors. Robert had no tolerance for weakness, neither from his staff nor from his own daughter, though he never admitted aloud that her chaos frightened him more than it angered him. And yet, this was the beginning of a story different from all the rest. Because just as the last nanny's car disappeared down the driveway, another name appeared on his assistants list, a name Robert nearly dismissed with a scoff. Maya Johnson, 22 years old, no family references, no private school experience, raised in the foster system, now living in a shelter on the edge of Manhattan. On paper, she was the least qualified candidate he had ever seen. But desperation had a way of making him careless, and the interview was scheduled anyway. Before Maya even arrived, Emily had broken a vase, screamed at her tutor, and locked herself in the upstairs playroom. The household buzzed with whispers that this new girl wouldn't last an hour. Robert adjusted his tie in the mirror, irritation carved into every movement. He needed stability for Emily, but no one seemed capable of giving it. Meanwhile, miles away in the city, Maya sat on the edge of her narrow shelter bed, clutching the only possession she kept from childhood, a wooden puppet carved by an older foster brother. The paint had faded, and one arm was loose, but she carried it as a reminder that even broken things could tell stories. She whispered to herself, steadying her breath. This interview was her chance. If she failed, she would return to job postings that barely covered food, and the cycle of rejection would continue. The shelter hallways echoed with the laughter of children who hadn't yet learned how cruel the world could be. Maya walked past them with her head high, though inside her chest, nerves battled with determination. She had grown used to being underestimated, used to proving people wrong. "One more try," she murmured, holding the puppet close before slipping it into her bag. By afternoon, she stood outside Kingsley Tower in Manhattan, staring up at the glass skyscraper that seemed to pierce the clouds. The revolving doors reflected her nervous face, the worn coat she wore, and the confidence she tried to summon. Inside, polished marble and sharp suits moved with purpose, and security guards eyed her as though she didn't belong. Still, she stepped forward, refusing to let their stares break her resolve. What she didn't know was that her arrival would stir more than just another failed attempt. Inside that office, a battle was waiting to begin. A clash not only between a young woman from the shelter and a billionaire who trusted no one, but between two worlds built on loneliness. Emily's silence upstairs, Robert's frustration behind closed doors, and Maya's quiet courage were on the verge of colliding. And this, dear listener, is where the story begins. But before we dive deeper into how a single toy would change the lives inside that cold mansion, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a moment of this journey. Because what happens next will turn expectations upside down. Maya's shoes clicked softly against the polished floor as she followed the assistant through the endless hallways of Kingsley Tower. The building carried the smell of leather, ink and expensive coffee, each corner a reminder of wealth and authority. Her palms were damp, but her expression stayed calm. Years in the shelter had taught her to hide nerves behind quiet determination. She repeated the words she always told herself, "I've faced worse than this, I can face him too." At the end of the corridor, a set of heavy double doors opened, revealing Robert Kingsley's office. The room stretched wide with glass walls framing the New York skyline. Behind a massive desk sat the man himself, sharp suit pressed to perfection, silver cufflinks glinting under the light. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable as they flicked up from a stack of papers. "So you're Maya Johnson," Robert said flatly, his voice clipped, efficient. "Yes, sir." Her voice carried steady, though her heart beat quick. "You don't have the background of the others I've interviewed," he remarked, glancing at her file. "No formal childcare training, no degree, foster homes, shelters, not exactly a resume I'd expect." Maya met his eyes. "You've tried nannies with perfect resumes and none of them stayed. Maybe you need someone who understands what it feels like to be unwanted." For the first time, Robert leaned back, eyebrows lifting slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Emily rushed inside, her hair wild, her small fists clenched around a stuffed animal. "I hate this place," she screamed, throwing the toy onto the floor. Her voice echoed against the glass walls. The assistant stepped forward nervously. "Mr. Kingsley, leave us," Robert snapped. His tone was icy, but inside, frustration boiled. This was exactly why every nanny failed. Emily was uncontrollable. Emily stomped toward the window, arms crossed, ignoring everyone. Maya felt a pang in her chest, not pity but recognition. She knew that posture, the tight grip of anger hiding something softer underneath. Slowly, she reached into her bag. "Emily," she said gently, kneeling so her voice carried no threat. "Can I show you something?" The girl glanced at her with suspicion, lips pressed tight. Maya pulled out the old puppet. Its wooden face was chipped, its paint faded, but when she slipped her hand inside, its head tilted in a curious nod. "Hello," Maya said in a playful tone through the puppet. "I'm Mr. Whiskers, and I've never been this high up before. Do you think the clouds can see us?" Emily blinked, the fire in her eyes dimming into curiosity. She edged closer, not speaking, but watching. The puppet waved its loose arm clumsily, and Emily's lips twitched despite herself. Robert observed silently, arms folded, masking his surprise. No one had ever gotten his daughter's attention this quickly. Emily finally whispered, "Why does his arm shake like that?" Maya smiled. "Because he's nervous. New places make him a little scared. But I think if someone showed him around, he'd feel braver." Emily hesitated, then took the puppet's tiny hand. Her anger had melted into focus, her breathing steady. Robert cleared his throat, breaking the fragile moment. "That will be all, Emily. Go with your tutor." But for once, Emily didn't protest. She left quietly, still clutching the puppet's image in her mind. When the door shut, Robert's gaze sharpened on Maya. "What was that?" "A toy," she replied. "Sometimes children need something simple to help them speak." He leaned forward. "You think you can handle her?" Maya held his stare. "I don't think. I know." The office fell silent except for the hum of the city below. Robert wasn't convinced, but he wasn't dismissing her either. A small victory in a place where doors usually slammed shut. The limousine that carried Maya rolled past iron gates and down a long driveway shaded by ancient oak trees. The Kingsley estate stretched out before her, a vast mansion perched on the cliffs of the Hamptons, its windows glittering in the afternoon light. From the outside it looked like a palace, but Maya sensed an emptiness within the walls, the kind of silence that money couldn't fill. She pressed her hands together in her lap, steadying the nervous rhythm of her breath. When the car stopped, a housekeeper in a starched uniform opened the door. "This way," she said politely, though her eyes lingered with doubt. Maya caught the flicker of skepticism, the same expression she had seen countless times before, from foster families, from teachers, from employers who thought she wasn't enough. She ignored it, stepping out with quiet determination. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and expensive flowers. The marble foyer gleamed, and the portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls. Yet despite its beauty, the space felt more like a museum than a home. Servants moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, their voices hushed. She could almost hear their whispers. She won't last either. Emily appeared at the top of the staircase, her small frame wrapped in a frilly dress. She leaned against the railing, her expression cool, almost daring. Maya offered a warm smile. "Hi, Emily," she called softly. The child tilted her head. "You're the new one," she said flatly, as if announcing a fact rather than welcoming her. "That's right," Maya replied, "and I brought Mr. Whiskers with me. He says he's excited to see your room." Emily hesitated, then crossed her arms. "We'll see." She turned and walked upstairs without waiting. The housekeeper gave a short sigh. "Don't take it personally. None of them last more than a day or two." Maya followed Emily up the staircase, refusing to let the words sink in. She entered a playroom overflowing with toys, yet strangely lifeless. Dolls lined the shelves, untouched. Expensive sets of blocks stood half-built. A flat screen glowed in the corner, muted cartoons looping endlessly. Emily sat cross-legged on the carpet, staring at Maya with sharp, testing eyes. Maya knelt beside her, pulling the puppet from her bag. "Mr. Whiskers was worried he'd get lost in a house this big. Can you show him where he should sit?" Emily's mouth twitched, but she quickly masked it. "Maybe, if he behaves." The hours passed in quiet rhythms. Instead of turning on the television, Maya began telling stories with the puppet, weaving tales of brave adventures and silly mistakes. Emily giggled at the crooked way Mr. Whiskers danced, though she tried to hide it by covering her mouth. Slowly, the distance between them shrank. At dinner, the long mahogany table stretched like a barrier. Robert sat at the head, scanning his phone between bites of steak. Emily pushed peas around her plate, her shoulders tense. Maya leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Mr. Whiskers says he's never seen peas this green. Should he try them?" Emily snickered, then picked up her fork and ate a few without complaint. Robert noticed, glancing up with raised brows, but he said nothing. His silence carried both curiosity and suspicion. Later that evening, Emily surprised the staff by following Maya willingly to bed. She clutched the puppet under her arm, her eyelids heavy. "Can you tell him a story until he falls asleep?" she asked softly. Maya brushed a curl from the girl's forehead. "Of course." She began to whisper a tale about a small toy who found courage in unexpected places. Emily drifted into sleep before the story ended. As Maya stood, the housekeeper lingered at the doorway, whispering, "Maybe you'll last longer than the others." Down the hall, Robert watched in silence, his expression unreadable. For the first time in weeks, the mansion seemed a little less cold. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Kingsley mansion, painting long golden streaks across the floor. Maya stood in the kitchen, pouring cereal into a bowl, while Emily sat at the counter, her chin resting on her hands. The child's eyes carried a weight no 7-year-old should bear, a quiet sadness that appeared when she thought no one was watching. "Do you want strawberries with it?" Maya asked gently. Emily shrugged. "Mum used to put strawberries. Dad just says to hurry up." Maya's heart pinched. She slid the bowl in front of her. "Then we'll do it your mum's way." Emily's eyes softened, and for a moment the wall between them thinned. But later that morning, Robert's voice thundered down the hall. "Maya!" he called sharply, stepping into the playroom. He wore his usual navy suit, tie knotted tight, his phone buzzing in his hand. "Why is she painting? She has math tutoring in 10 minutes. Maya looked up from the floor where Emily had been happily mixing colors. "She'll be ready, but she needed a few minutes to express herself." Robert's jaw clenched. Express herself? "She has discipline issues, not art class. Don't indulge her moods." Emily's brush froze in her hand, eyes darting nervously between them. Maya rose, calm but firm. "She's not misbehaving. She's showing you what she can't put into words." Robert's gaze turned cold. "You're here to follow instructions, not give lectures. Do your job." Maya swallowed the sting of his tone but didn't back down. "If all she gets is schedules and tutors, you'll never hear her voice. She's asking for connection." Emily's lips trembled. She whispered, "I don't like tutors." Robert ignored her, turning to Maya. "Don't overstep again." He walked out briskly, leaving silence heavy in the room. Emily stared at the door, her small shoulders curling inward. "He doesn't listen." Maya knelt beside her. "He doesn't always know how, but that doesn't mean your feelings don't matter." Emily leaned closer, whispering, "Do you listen?" Maya nodded. "Always." That afternoon, Maya noticed more details. The untouched corner of Emily's closet where a pair of ballet slippers gathered dust, the way the girl froze when anyone mentioned her mother, the habit of hiding drawings under the bed as if afraid they'd be thrown away. Each sign spoke of loneliness, of a child grieving in silence while her father drowned himself in work. At dinner, Robert barely glanced up from his phone, while Emily pushed food around her plate. Maya's frustrations simmered. She couldn't stay silent forever, but she also knew one wrong word could cost her the job. Later, as Maya tucked Emily into bed, the girl clutched the puppet against her chest. "Mr. Whiskers says the house is too quiet. He says it's scary at night." Maya brushed a curl from her forehead. "Then we'll make it less quiet. Tomorrow you and I will fill it with stories." Emily smiled faintly, eyes fluttering shut. Down the hall, Robert stood in his study, staring out at the dark waves crashing against the cliffs. He wanted control, wanted order, yet something about Maya unsettled him. She didn't bend like the others. And worse, Emily seemed to need her. The cracks in the walls of the Kingsley mansion were no longer invisible. They spread quietly, threatening the foundation Robert worked so hard to keep unshaken. And Maya, without realizing, had become the force widening them. The morning began with rain, soft droplets sliding down the glass windows of the mansion. Emily sat cross-legged on the carpet, her mood unusually quiet. She held the puppet in her lap, turning it in her hands, as though searching for answers in its faded paint. Maya watched from the armchair, giving her space, waiting for the moment Emily would speak. Finally, the girl whispered, "Why do you keep him if he's old and broken?" Maya leaned forward. "Because he still makes people smile. Sometimes the things that look broken are the ones with the best stories." Emily ran her finger along the puppet's chipped cheek. "Can he talk about my mom?" The question hit Maya like a sharp breath. She chose her words carefully. "He can say anything you want him to. Do you want him to ask about her?" Emily nodded. Maya slipped her hand inside and tilted the puppet's head. "Hello, Emily. I was wondering, what was your mom like?" Emily's eyes glistened, but she didn't pull away. Her voice came small, fragile. "She smelled like vanilla, and she laughed a lot. She used to sing when she cooked. Dad doesn't like to talk about her." Maya kept the puppet's gaze steady. "That sounds wonderful. She must have loved you very much." Emily clutched the puppet tightly, her lips trembling. "I don't remember her face clearly anymore, just her voice." Maya placed a gentle hand over Emily's. "That's why we share stories, so we don't forget." For the rest of the morning, Emily poured out memories through the puppet. She spoke of bedtime songs, picnics in Central Park, the way her mother braided her hair. Each word carried a mix of sorrow and relief, as though a heavy weight was finally being lifted. Maya listened, never interrupting, guiding only with soft questions through Mr. Whiskers. By afternoon, Emily's energy shifted. She ran to fetch crayons and paper, spreading them across the playroom floor. "Mr. Whiskers needs a new friend," she declared. "One that looks like Mom." Maya helped her sketch a puppet figure, letting Emily decide the colors, the dress, even the smile. Laughter replaced the silence that had filled the room for weeks. For the first time, the mansion echoed with the sound of joy. When dinner arrived, Emily carried the puppet to the table. She set him carefully beside her plate. Robert raised an eyebrow but said nothing, observing quietly as his daughter ate without protest, chatting softly to her wooden companion. Afterward, Maya led Emily upstairs. The girl's eyes were heavy, but her spirit seemed lighter. She curled beneath her blanket, hugging the puppet close. "Can he tell me a bedtime story?" Maya smiled, adjusting the puppet's arm. "Once upon a time there was a little girl who thought she was all alone. But she wasn't, because she carried her mom's songs in her heart. And even when the nights were dark, those songs kept her brave." Emily's breathing slowed, her lashes fluttering as she drifted into sleep. Maya sat beside her for a moment longer, feeling the weight of trust settling between them. Down the hall, Robert stood in the shadows, unseen. His eyes softened at the sound of his daughter's quiet snores, the peace that had been absent for so long. Yet beneath the softness, his chest tightened with unease. He had built his life on control and distance, and now both were slipping through his fingers because of a young woman from a shelter and an old puppet with chipped paint. The morning air in the mansion felt heavier than usual, as though tension itself clung to the walls. Maya sensed it the moment she walked into the dining room. Robert sat at the head of the table, his jaw tight, scrolling through messages on his phone. Emily sat quietly beside him, Mr. Whiskers resting on her lap, her fork idly poking scrambled eggs she had no interest in eating. "Maya," Robert said without looking up. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I need to speak with you in my study after breakfast." The tone wasn't a request. Emily's eyes flicked nervously between them, gripping the puppet tighter. In the study, the polished oak shelves and leather-bound books gave the room an air of authority. Robert closed the door, fixing Maya with a sharp stare. "I had dinner with my business partner last night. He made an interesting comment about the woman I've hired to look after my daughter." Maya kept her posture straight. "What did he say?" "That employing someone from a shelter might not send the right message," Robert replied bluntly. "It could affect how people see me. And by extension, Emily." Maya's chest tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "So your image matters more than what Emily needs?" Robert's eyes narrowed. "Don't twist my words. I have to protect her, and part of that is ensuring she's surrounded by stability and—" "Stability?" Maya cut in. "You've cycled through 6 nannies in a week. That's not stability, Mr. Kingsley. That's avoidance." The air in the room sharpened. No one spoke to Robert Kingsley that way. He leaned forward, his voice low and controlled. "You are here to follow instructions. Nothing more. Emotional involvement is unnecessary." Maya matched his stare. "Emily doesn't need another employee who treats her like a task. She needs connection. She needs someone who actually listens." For a moment, silence burned between them. Robert's hand curled into a fist on the desk. "You are dangerously close to forgetting your place. And you're dangerously close to losing your daughter." Maya shot back before she could stop herself. The words landed like a strike. Robert rose from his chair, his towering figure casting a shadow across the room. "You think you understand her? You've been here less than a week." "I don't just understand her," Maya replied, her voice trembling with both fear and conviction. "I see her, and she sees me. That's why she trusts me." The door burst open. Emily stood there, tears in her eyes, clutching the puppet. "Don't make her leave," she cried, rushing forward. "Please, Dad." "She's the only one who makes me happy." Robert froze, caught between anger and shock. Emily had never begged for a nanny before, never cried for one to stay. The sight of her small body shaking, her arms wrapped around Maya, left him speechless. "Maya," Emily whispered, burying her face against her. "Don't go. Please don't go." Maya held her close, feeling the child's heart racing. She looked up at Robert, her own eyes burning. "Do you really want to rip this away from her just because of your pride?" Robert's mouth opened, but no words came. He turned sharply toward the window, his reflection staring back at him from the glass. His silence was not surrender, but it was far from victory. The clash had left scars in the air, Robert unwilling to admit defeat, Maya unwilling to back down, and Emily caught in the middle. Yet beneath the storm, something had shifted. For the first time, Robert couldn't ignore the possibility that maybe Maya was right. The storm from the previous night lingered in the mansion, not in the weather outside, but in the silence that followed the clash. Robert buried himself in meetings, barely appearing in the house, while Emily clung to Maya more than ever. It was as if the girl feared that if she let go, Maya might vanish like the others. That evening, Emily sat curled in her bed, the puppet resting beside her pillow. The night was still, save for the distant hum of waves. She looked at Maya with wide eyes. "You won't leave me, right?" Maya sat on the edge of the bed, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's cheek. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere tonight." Emily hesitated before asking, "Why do you always keep him with you? Mr. Whiskers, I mean. Did someone give him to you?" Maya's throat tightened. She had avoided this story for years, but Emily's gaze was searching, pleading for truth. Slowly she nodded. "Yes, a boy from the shelter carved him. He was older than me, maybe 15. Back then I was just a kid, scared all the time. He gave me the puppet and said, "When the nights get too long, talk through him. It'll feel less lonely." Emily traced the puppet's wooden arm. "Did it help?" "It saved me," Maya admitted softly. "Because when I made him talk, I wasn't just a girl who had nothing. I was someone who could make stories, someone who could dream. It gave me a way to survive." Emily's voice trembled. "So, you know what it's like to be alone?" Maya's chest ached at the raw honesty of the question. She placed her hand over Emily's small one. "Yes, I know it too well. But I also know that even when you feel unwanted, it doesn't mean you're not worth loving." Emily blinked fast, her eyes brimming with tears. She leaned into Maya, whispering, "That's how I feel. Like Dad doesn't really want me." Maya wrapped her arms around her. "He does, Emily. He just doesn't know how to show it. Losing someone changes people." Unbeknownst to them, Robert stood in the hallway. He had come to check on Emily, but stopped when he heard Maya's voice. His chest tightened as he listened, every word a mirror he didn't want to face. Inside the room, Emily lifted her head. "Do you ever wish you had a family?" Maya smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Every day. I used to imagine someone would walk into the shelter and say, 'She's the one. We want her.' But it never happened. So I learned to build my own kind of family, with friends, with kids like me, with anyone who cared enough to stay." Emily hugged her tighter. "Then maybe you can be part of mine." The words pierced the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. Maya's throat ached with emotion, but she kissed the top of Emily's head. "I'd like that." In the hallway, Robert clenched his fists, torn between pride and guilt. He wanted to step in, to say something, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. He realized, with a sting he couldn't ignore, that Maya had given Emily something he never could: understanding. As Maya tucked Emily beneath the blanket and whispered a final goodnight, Emily clutched the puppet close, her small face peaceful for the first time in weeks. And though Robert walked away without a word, he carried the weight of what he had overheard. For the first time in years, the grief he kept buried began to crack open, letting in a light he wasn't ready to face. The Kingsley limousine glided through the streets of Manhattan, its black exterior gleaming beneath the city lights. Inside, Robert sat stiff in his tailored suit, scrolling through last-minute notes for the evening's charity gala. Emily sat beside him, her small hands folded nervously in her lap. She wore a pale blue dress chosen by a stylist, but her eyes darted around as though she wanted to disappear into the leather seat. Across from her, Maya offered a reassuring smile. "Remember," Maya said softly, "we're not here to impress anyone. We're here to enjoy ourselves, and if it feels too big, Mr. Whiskers can always help." Emily glanced at the puppet poking from Maya's bag. "Can he really come?" "Of course," Maya replied. "He goes where you go." Robert lowered his phone with a frown. "Maya, this isn't playtime. This is a high-profile event. The last thing I need is my daughter carrying a broken toy in front of cameras." Emily's shoulders tensed. Maya met Robert's eyes calmly. "It's not just a toy, it's her anchor. If she feels safe, she'll surprise you." Robert said nothing, but his jaw tightened as the car slowed to a stop outside the glittering entrance of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Photographers swarmed the red carpet, flashes sparking like lightning. The crowd buzzed with excitement, eager to glimpse billionaires and socialites. The moment the door opened, Emily gripped Maya's hand. For a second she froze, her breath catching in her throat. But then Maya whispered, "Mr. Whiskers says he's never seen so many lights. Maybe you could show him how to be brave." Emily straightened, holding her chin high. She walked between her father and Maya, her small frame poised, her expression calm. The cameras clicked, but instead of melting down as Robert feared, Emily held her ground. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers dripped crystals and violins played softly in the background. Guests floated in gowns and tuxedos, sipping champagne. The moment they spotted Robert Kingsley, whispers began. "Is that his new nanny?" one woman murmured. "From a shelter, I heard." "Still," another whispered, "look at the girl." She's never behaved like this before. Robert overheard the comments, his chest tightening with conflicting emotions. Pride tugged at him as he watched Emily smile politely when introduced, shaking hands with donors without fuss. Yet irritation lingered at the thought that Maya's influence, not his own, had made this possible. At the dinner table, Emily leaned toward Maya and whispered, "Can Mr. Whiskers tell me a story so I don't feel bored?" Maya chuckled softly, keeping her voice low. "He says once upon a time there was a princess who thought big ballrooms were scary, but then she remembered she had a secret friend who made her brave." Emily giggled, covering her mouth. Guests nearby glanced over, smiling at the sight of the child's joy. Robert caught the glances, his throat tight. For once they weren't whispering about Emily's tantrums. Later, as speeches droned on, Robert stepped aside with a colleague. "I'll admit," the man said, swirling his glass of wine, "your daughter's composure tonight is impressive, different from last year. What changed?" Robert's gaze flicked toward Maya, who sat beside Emily, whispering encouragement. He didn't answer. Instead, he muttered, "Things are different at home." By the time the gala ended, Emily leaned sleepily against Maya, her face peaceful. As they walked back toward the limousine, she whispered, "I wasn't scared this time." Maya kissed the top of her head. "That's because you were brave all on your own." Robert followed a step behind, his thoughts a storm. The world had seen a different Emily tonight, and though he hated to admit it, it wasn't because of him. The ocean winds howled against the cliffs that night, rattling the windows of the Kingsley mansion. Rain lashed against the glass in wild sheets, but the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm brewing within. Emily lay curled in her bed, her forehead hot, her breaths shallow. Maya pressed a cool cloth against her skin, worry gnawing at her with every passing minute. "Shh, sweetheart," Maya whispered, brushing damp curls from Emily's face. "It's just a fever. I'm here." Emily stirred weakly, clutching the puppet against her chest. "Don't leave, Maya. Promise you won't leave." "I promise," Maya said, her voice steady, even as her stomach twisted with fear. She had seen sickness in shelters before, had sat by children with fevers that burned through the night. She knew the signs to watch for, the small tricks to keep a child comfortable. But here, in this vast mansion, the silence around her felt louder than any siren. She carried a bowl of water from the bathroom, the sound of thunder shaking the walls. The house staff had retreated to their quarters, leaving Maya alone in the dimly lit bedroom. She knelt at Emily's bedside, changing the cloth again, whispering stories through Mr. Whiskers to ease the girl's restlessness. Hours passed. Maya didn't move from her place, her eyes fixed on Emily's face. Each cough, each moan tightened her chest. She remembered nights when no one stayed by her own bed, when her cries went unanswered. She swore Emily would never feel that kind of abandonment. It was nearly dawn when the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. The door burst open, and Robert entered, rain dripping from his coat. His face was pale, his usual calm fractured. "What happened?" he demanded, rushing to the bed. "Why wasn't I called sooner?" Maya looked up, exhaustion in her eyes. "She spiked a fever last night. I've kept her cool, made sure she stayed hydrated. It's under control, but she needs rest." Robert touched his daughter's forehead, his hand trembling slightly. "God," he muttered. For once, the man who thrived on power and control looked utterly helpless. Emily stirred, blinking at him. "Daddy?" Her voice was a faint whisper. "I'm here, Princess," he said quickly, sitting beside her. "I'm here." Emily reached out, her tiny hand brushing his sleeve, but when her eyes searched the room, they landed on Maya. "Don't let her go, Daddy. Please don't let Maya go." Robert's throat tightened. He glanced at Maya, seeing the fatigue etched into her face, the unwavering care in her posture. For the first time, he realized she hadn't left Emily's side all night. "You stayed with her?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded. "Where else would I be?" Robert looked away, struggling to swallow the guilt rising in him. He had been in meetings, dinners, endless work while his daughter lay sick. And it was Maya, the girl he had nearly dismissed, who had carried the weight he should have borne. For the rest of the morning, Robert remained in the room, pacing, hovering, unsure what to do. Maya guided Emily through small sips of water, cool compresses, gentle whispers. Robert watched, each moment carving a crack deeper into the image he held of himself as a father. By afternoon, Emily's fever began to ease. She fell into a deep sleep, her breathing steadier. Maya finally leaned back, her body aching but relief flooding her chest. Robert stood by the window, staring at the grey ocean beyond. His reflection looked foreign, hollow eyes, clenched jaw. When he turned to Maya, his voice was rough. "Thank you." Maya met his gaze, tired but unflinching. "She doesn't just need a nanny, Mr. Kingsley. She needs you." The words lingered, sharp and undeniable, as the storm outside began to fade. The fever had passed, but the tension it left behind clung to the mansion like damp air after a storm. Emily recovered slowly, her cheeks gaining color again, yet Maya noticed Robert retreating back into his fortress of work. For a brief moment during the night of worry, he had shown vulnerability. Now he buried it under schedules and meetings, as though admitting weakness had been a sin. Maya sat with Emily at breakfast when the butler carried in a folded newspaper. Robert, seated at the head of the table, opened it with his usual briskness, until his eyes landed on the front page. His expression hardened. He turned the paper so Maya could see. The headline blared, "Billionaire's Mystery Nanny, Shelter Girl or Scandal Waiting to Happen." Beneath it was a grainy photograph of Maya holding Emily's hand as they left the charity gala. Maya's stomach sank. "They followed us." Robert's voice was ice. "The world always follows me. And now, thanks to you, my judgment is being questioned." Emily's fork clattered onto her plate. "What does it mean, Daddy?" "Nothing you need to worry about," he said quickly, folding the paper, but the tightness in his jaw betrayed his calm. Maya forced her voice to stay steady. "This isn't about me. It's about them twisting something good into gossip. You know I've done nothing wrong." Robert slammed the paper onto the table. "Perception is reality in my world. Investors read this. Partners read this. They don't see your intentions, they see a liability." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "She's not a problem. She helps me." Robert looked at his daughter, then back at Maya, conflict warring in his eyes. "You should have been more careful. No photographs, no attention." Anger rose in Maya's chest. "Careful? You're blaming me for caring about your daughter in public. Maybe if you stood beside her with the same pride, people would talk differently." Robert's voice cut like a blade. "Enough. You don't understand the pressure I face." Maya's hands trembled, but her words carried fire. "And you don't understand the pressure Emily faces every single day, alone, ignored, treated like she's an accessory instead of a child. You hide behind your reputation while she begs for love. Which one of us is really failing her?" The room went silent. Emily's small sob broke the stillness. "Stop yelling," she cried, pushing her chair back and running toward the stairs. Maya instinctively started to follow, but Robert's sharp tone froze her. "Stay, I'll handle her." She turned on him, fury burning in her chest. "Handle her?" "She's not a problem to manage, Robert. She's your daughter." His face hardened. "If you can't remember your place here, you don't belong in this house." The words hit like a blow. Maya felt her breath catch, but she stood tall. "If my place is to stay silent while she suffers, then you're right. I don't belong here." They locked eyes, both unyielding, both wounded by truths neither wanted to face. For Robert, it was the fear of losing control. For Maya, it was the fear of losing the child who had finally let her in. Upstairs, a door slammed, Emily's cries muffled by walls too thick for comfort. The sound lingered in Robert's ears, long after silence fell again. He turned away, staring at the window, while Maya stood rooted in place, her chest heavy with the weight of a decision she wasn't sure she could make. The breaking point had come, and nothing in the Kingsley mansion would be the same again. The mansion felt suffocating in the wake of the argument. Robert had retreated into his study, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts, too tangled to untangle. Maya stood in the hallway for a long while, staring at the door Emily had slammed, her heart heavy with the words she'd thrown. She hadn't meant to speak so harshly, but something inside her had snapped. Emily didn't deserve the coldness in Robert's eyes, the constant battle for control that only left her feeling more alone. She paced the hallway, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The silence of the house pressed down on her, the storm outside now a quiet murmur. She had promised herself she would protect Emily, even if it meant facing down the man who seemed to have the power to dismiss her with a glance. Without thinking, Maya knocked on Robert's study door. The sound was tentative, but it was enough to break the stillness inside. "Come in," Robert's voice called, sharp yet laced with an exhaustion that was hard to ignore. Maya stepped into the room, her posture stiff. "We need to talk." Robert didn't look up from the papers scattered across his desk, his hand flipping through them as though his life depended on the numbers before him. "I'm listening." She crossed the room and stopped just beyond his desk, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "You don't understand, do you?" Robert's eyes flickered up, irritation evident. "Understand what?" "The way you shut Emily out," Maya replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You're so focused on what's easiest for you, what fits your perfect controlled world, that you forget she's a child. She's not a project, Robert. She's a little girl who's been grieving for years, and you're pushing her further away." Robert set down the papers, leaning back in his chair. His gaze was unreadable, but something darker flickered behind his eyes. "I'm trying to protect her, to give her the life she deserves. By ignoring her feelings," Maya shot back, "by making her think she has to hide her pain. You're not protecting her, Robert. You're stifling her." For a moment, Robert's gaze softened, and Maya saw a flash of vulnerability she hadn't noticed before. He ran a hand through his hair, his voice quieter this time. "I don't know how to fix it. I never knew how to be what she needs." Maya's breath caught, the weight of his confession heavy in the air between them. For a split second she saw him, not the billionaire, not the distant father, but a man lost, unsure of how to reach the child who had once been the center of his world. "I know," she whispered, her voice gentler now. "You lost her mother, Robert. And you've been trying to fill the hole with everything but her. But Emily can't heal if you don't let her in." Robert's face tightened again, his fingers gripping the arms of his chair as though he were bracing for something more. "I can't lose her, Maya. I can't." Maya took a step forward, her voice soft but firm. "You're not going to lose her. But if you don't start showing up for her, if you don't start showing her that it's okay to be vulnerable, to need someone, then you will." The words hung in the air like a threat, but they weren't meant to hurt. They were a reality Robert had avoided for far too long. A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of rain tapping gently against the windows. Robert sat still, processing her words, his mind racing with the weight of what they meant for the future. He had spent years burying his grief, hiding behind a fortress of wealth and power, but that fortress had crumbled in the face of a child's pain, and he knew it was time to face what he had been running from. Finally he spoke, his voice low and shaky. "What do you think I should do?" Maya's shoulders relaxed just slightly. "Start by being present. Start by listening to her. Not because you have to, but because you want to. The rest will come." Robert exhaled slowly, the tension in his body easing just a fraction. He nodded once, his eyes meeting hers with a newfound understanding. "I'll try." Maya gave him a small, tentative smile. "That's all she needs, a try." As she turned to leave, Robert's voice stopped her. "Maya." She paused, looking back at him. "I don't know if I'll ever get this right," he said, his tone raw, vulnerable. "But I'll try. For her. For both of you." Maya's heart ached with the weight of his words. "That's all anyone can do." And with that she left the room, the weight of the conversation lingering in the air. Outside, the rain began to let up, as though nature itself was offering a quiet sigh of relief. The morning of the recital arrived with a sharp chill in the autumn air. Leaves scattered across the Kingsley driveway in fiery shades of red and gold. Inside the mansion, Emily paced nervously near the front door, her backpack clutched tightly against her chest. Maya knelt beside her, smoothing the front of her dress, a soft yellow one Emily had chosen herself. "What if I mess up?" Emily whispered. "What if I forget my part?" Maya smiled, lifting the puppet gently from her bag. Then Mr. Whiskers will remind you. Harry told me he's memorized every line. Emily giggled, her nerves easing slightly. Do you think he can come on stage? He'll be in your pocket, Maya said. Right next to your heart, just like your mom's songs. Emily nodded solemnly, then looked up at the stairs. Is Daddy coming? Maya hesitated. He said he would. They arrived at the school auditorium to find parents buzzing in every corner, camera flashes and flower bouquets filling the space with energy. Maya walked Emily to the backstage area and knelt one last time. You're ready, she said, and I'm proud of you no matter what happens up there. Emily hugged her tightly. Don't leave until I'm done. Never, Maya whispered. The lights dimmed and the curtain rose. Maya sat in the audience among strangers, scanning the crowd until her eyes caught the back of a tall figure entering quietly, Robert. He wore a dark coat and stood near the exit, as if unsure whether to stay. But when the children began their lines, he moved closer, his eyes searching. When Emily stepped onto the stage, her face went pale under the lights. She froze, scanning the crowd in panic. For a heartbeat, Maya feared the moment would crush her. But then Emily reached into her pocket and felt the tiny wooden puppet. Her lips moved silently, repeating something Maya had once told her. She took a breath, and then she spoke. Clear, steady, bright. Her lines flowed one after another, not perfect, but full of life. Her classmates followed her lead. Laughter spread through the crowd as Emily acted out a small skit, her confidence growing with each passing second. When the applause came, she bowed low, cheeks flushed with pride. Maya clapped, tears burning her eyes. From the side of the auditorium, Robert stood frozen. His expression was unreadable, part disbelief, part awe. When Emily spotted him, her eyes widened. She waved, and he raised a hand in return, a tentative smile forming at the edge of his mouth. After the show, the hallway buzzed with chatter. Maya waited near the lockers until Emily came bounding toward her. Did you see me? I didn't forget anything. You were amazing, Maya said, kneeling to hug her. You didn't just remember, you owned it. Emily grinned, then spotted her father standing awkwardly a few feet away. She ran to him without hesitation. I saw you, she beamed. You came. Robert bent down, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. You were incredible, Emily, truly. She hugged him tightly, and for the first time he embraced her back without hesitation. Over her shoulder, his eyes met Maya's. Something had changed, something undeniable. Later, as they left the school together, Robert fell into step beside Maya. His voice was quiet. You were right. She didn't need perfection. She just needed someone to believe in her. Maya gave him a small nod. And now she knows you do. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. Emily skipped ahead, her laughter echoing down the sidewalk. Robert watched her, then turned back to Maya. Thank you, he said. Maya didn't respond with words. She simply smiled, knowing that some moments spoke louder than anything else. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the Kingsley mansion, bathing the polished floors in a warm glow. Maya sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in her hands as she watched Robert pace back and forth. His mind seemed 1,000 miles away, lost in thoughts Maya could only guess at. Robert, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. You've been quiet all morning. Is everything okay? Robert stopped, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, he muttered. I'm being pulled in 2 directions. Maya raised an eyebrow. How do you mean? Robert took a deep breath, sitting across from her. I've been offered a new position, one that could secure Emily's future. More money, more control, but it means more travel, more time away from home, and that's not counting the pressure from investors. They've been pushing for results, and now with everything with Emily, I'm not sure what's right anymore. Maya set her coffee down, leaning in. What's really bothering you, Robert? He met her gaze, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. The truth is, I'm not sure if I can do both. Be the father she needs and the businessman I've been. There's a part of me that's scared if I choose one, I'll lose the other. Maya took a moment to let his words sink in. It was clear to her that Robert was trapped in a battle between his desires and his responsibilities. He had spent so much of his life building an empire that he had never learned how to just be there for Emily, how to simply be a parent without the weight of expectations on his shoulders. "You don't have to choose between them," she said softly. "You just need to find a way to make both work, but you can't keep sacrificing one for the other. If you keep running, eventually both will slip through your fingers." Robert's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't understand. This is bigger than just me and Emily. This is about everything I've worked for." "I understand more than you think," Maya replied, her voice quiet but firm. "I grew up with nothing. But I learned that the things we think are most important, money, power, success, they're not the things that matter in the end. What matters is the people we love. If you keep thinking you have to do it all on your own, you'll miss the only thing you can't get back: time." Robert fell silent, his jaw clenched. Maya watched as he wrestled with her words. She knew he was torn. She had seen that look in countless others, people afraid of losing control, of failing the ones they loved. But she also knew that if he didn't change, he would lose Emily in the process. "I can't just walk away from everything I've built," Robert said, his voice low, almost defeated. "And I'm not asking you to," Maya replied. "But you can't keep pretending that Emily's world revolves around your success. She needs you, Robert, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just you." He looked down at his hands, his fingers trembling ever so slightly. "What if I can't be what she needs? What if I screw it all up?" Maya's expression softened. "You're already doing it, Robert, by showing up, by trying. That's more than some people ever do." A long pause passed between them before Robert spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared, Maya. I'm scared I'll fail her just like I failed my wife. I don't want to repeat that mistake." Maya's heart softened at his words. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You're not your past, Robert, and neither is Emily. She needs you now more than anything, but you don't have to carry this weight alone." For a moment Robert said nothing, simply staring at their joined hands. Then, with a deep sigh, he nodded. "You're right. I've been running, trying to keep everything together, but I can't do it that way anymore. I don't want to lose her." Maya smiled gently. "You won't. But you have to choose her first." Robert looked up at her, his expression more resolute than it had been in days. "I'll figure it out, Maya. I'll find a way to make this work, for both of us." She stood up and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I believe you." As Maya left the room, she knew things were changing. Slowly, but they were changing. Robert was finally seeing the truth. Emily wasn't just a reflection of his success. She was a living, breathing person who needed him in a way nothing else ever would. And maybe, just maybe, Robert was ready to let go of the things that had once defined him and embrace the one thing that truly mattered: his daughter. The house felt quieter in the days following Robert's decision. He had begun to clear his schedule, his office appointments shrinking, while his time at home seemed to stretch. It wasn't a perfect shift. There were still meetings, still calls, but the difference was undeniable. Emily began to trust that he would be there for her, and her laughter filled the halls once more, a sound that had been absent for too long. It was a Friday afternoon when Robert stood in the kitchen, a mug of coffee in his hand, watching as Emily and Maya worked on an art project together. They were sitting at the large kitchen table, crayons and papers scattered in front of them. Emily was giggling, her face covered in splashes of paint. Maya was smiling, her eyes soft with affection. Robert had seen Maya's presence change his daughter over the past weeks. She was no longer the fragile, scared child he had first met. Maya had become a stabilizing force in her life, someone Emily could rely on. But now, Robert was starting to realize something even more profound. He too had to be a part of that. "Is this your masterpiece, Emily?" Robert asked, his voice warm but uncertain as he stepped closer. Emily looked up, eyes shining with excitement. "It's for you, Daddy." She held up a colorful drawing, the lines wild and free. "It's us!" Robert's heart softened at the sight. He had been expecting something more polished, something perfect. He realized he had been expecting her to perform. Instead, she had given him a piece of herself, and he hadn't even noticed until now. Maya smiled as she watched Robert take in the picture. "She's been working on it for a week," she said, her tone light but knowing. "It's her way of showing you what she feels." Robert looked down at the drawing, the vibrant colors almost blinding in their honesty. He could see the figures, Emily, herself, and him, their arms stretched wide. It wasn't a perfect picture, but it was raw and real, just like the relationship he had been neglecting. He knelt down, taking Emily's hand gently. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "This is beautiful." Emily beamed, her cheeks flushed with pride. "You like it? I love it." Robert's voice cracked slightly. "You know, I'm sorry I've been so absent. I'm sorry I didn't see how much you needed me." Emily's eyes softened. "You're here now." Robert's throat tightened. He nodded, but his gaze flicked to Maya, who stood a few steps away, watching him with quiet understanding. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice heavy with sincerity. "I'm here now." Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment between them. It wasn't just a promise, this was the beginning of something that would take time, effort, and trust. But it was real, and that meant more than any promise he could make. Robert stood, turning back to the counter, his movement slower now, less hurried. "I've been offered a position," he said, almost to himself. "A big one. But I don't know if it's the right thing anymore. I don't know if I want it." Maya's brow furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" He looked at her, his eyes steady now. "I've spent so much of my life building something outside of this, outside of us. But when I look at Emily, when I look at you, I realize what's really important. I can't keep running away from it. I need to be here. With you. With her." Maya's breath caught in her chest. "Robert, are you sure?" He met her eyes, his expression unwavering. "I'm sure. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I'm going to be present. I'm going to put my family first. That's the most important thing." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was full of understanding, full of relief. Maya nodded, her heart swelling. "I'm proud of you, Robert. This is the first step." Emily, who had been watching the exchange quietly, tugged at Robert's sleeve. "Daddy, can we have a family day tomorrow? Just the three of us?" Robert smiled, crouching down again. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want." As the evening faded into night, the Kingsley mansion no longer felt like an empty shell. There were no more walls between them, no more isolation. Emily had her father back, and Robert had found the courage to break free from the chains of his past. Maya, standing quietly in the background, felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had helped them find their way back to each other, but she knew this was just the beginning. And for the first time, Robert truly understood that family wasn't something to control or manage. It was something to live, to nurture, and to cherish. The sound of laughter drifted through the open windows of the Kingsley home. The kitchen smelled of vanilla pancakes, the kind Emily insisted they make every Saturday now. Robert flipped one on the stove, clumsily, unevenly, but when Emily burst into applause behind him, he grinned like he'd won a medal. "You're getting better, Daddy," she shouted. "That one didn't hit the ceiling." Robert chuckled. "Small victories." Maya leaned against the counter, watching them with a quiet smile. These were the moments she had hoped for, the simple, soft ones that didn't need grand gestures to mean everything. After breakfast, the three of them walked through the backyard, the morning sun casting long shadows across the garden. Emily ran ahead with Mr. Whiskers in hand, his stitches now mended, his color gently restored. Robert slowed his pace beside Maya. "She's different now," he said, his voice thoughtful. "She's stronger, happier." Maya looked at him. "So are you." He nodded slowly. "You gave us something I didn't know we needed. And now I have to ask you something important." She turned to him, unsure of where his words were heading. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not just as a nanny, not just for Emily, but for yourself. I want to sponsor you, help you go back to school, become the child counselor you always talked about. I'll cover everything. I want you to have your dream." Maya's breath caught. She hadn't spoken those words aloud to anyone but Emily, not since the shelter. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because you changed my daughter's life," Robert said, "and mine. And because people like you, people who know how to heal, need to go further than this house. But Emily still needs you too. We all do." Maya stared at him, emotion rising in her chest. "That's generous. But I don't want to lose her." "You won't," he replied. "You'll still be part of our lives. Just not stuck here. You were never meant to be hidden away. You belong to the world." Later that week, Maya sat with Emily on the floor of the playroom, surrounded by drawings and books. Emily clutched Mr. Whiskers and looked up at her. "Maya, what's college like?" Maya smiled. "It's a place where you learn how to help people in big ways. And I think I'm finally ready." Emily's face fell. "Are you leaving me?" "No, sweetheart," Maya said gently. "I'll always come back. Every weekend, every holiday. And you can call me whenever you want. But it's time for me to follow my dream, the way your mom would have wanted you to follow yours." Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "Okay. But Mr. Whiskers says he wants to visit college too." Maya laughed. "Then we'll make sure he gets a backpack." When the day came for Maya to start classes, Robert drove her to campus himself. Emily rode in the back seat, humming to herself and braiding the puppet string arms into tiny knots. The air buzzed with anticipation and bittersweet joy. Outside the admissions building, Robert turned to Maya. "You sure you're ready?" She looked up at the rows of tall brick buildings, at the young students rushing past, at the future finally unfolding in front of her. "More than ever." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a photo, her, Emily, and Robert on the lawn from the weekend before. On the back, in Emily's handwriting, were the words, "Come home soon." Maya hugged him tightly. "Thank you." "For everything." "No," he said, stepping back. "Thank you for saving us." As she walked through the gates, Maya didn't feel like the girl from the shelter anymore. She was someone who had changed lives. And now, it was time to change her own. Back at home, Emily held the puppet close, looking up at Robert. "Do you think Maya misses us already?" He smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "I know she does. And she'll be back Saturday, just in time for pancakes." Emily beamed. "With extra strawberries." Robert nodded. "Always." And so, a new story began, one built on trust, healing, and love that had no boundaries. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want more stories like this, click on the video showing now on your screen. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.